Hey, everybody, this is David Bloom at Next TMT Talks. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I am joined here with my colleague and co-founder, Daniel Frankel. We got lots to talk about from Memorial Day faux records at the box office to how AI toolmakers are pushing out, grabbing all the investment capital. Uh, I think, with what is often, most days, the biggest company in the world, Apple, and Tim Cook's no good, very bad week, month, half year. Dan, this is an interesting time. I mean, there's a lot keeps whacking Apple, and we're 12 days ahead of their big worldwide developers conference where they typically announce a whole lot of cool stuff. So what's
Well, when
going
you
on?
have an entity, a company that accounts for more than 7% of the S&P 500, you'd want to kneecap it just as a national policy, an economic policy. Uh, I think the trade policy as it relates to Apple is kind of insane. I mean, uh,
I mean, you're saying, do you really want to do that to a company that got that outsized an impact on at least the
right. Let me
objective
back up.
measures of the economy?
On Friday, Donald Trump sort of rekindled his trade rhetoric. He said he was going to put a 25% tariff on iPhones if Apple didn't start getting serious and making them here in the US.
I don't know if he rekindles it so much as, oh, it's been 3 days, time to put some more wood on the fire. I haven't said, because he did it with Europe. It's like Europe's going to get 50%, and then it was like, oh, we're going to back off. It's like, let me
Yeah.
know what it ends up as.
But I think the bigger, more consequential long-term issue was the, the guru behind the iPhone, Steve Jobs. What did he call Johnny Ive?
His spiritual partner.
Right. Going to Sam Altman in OpenAI in a $6.5 billion merger. And they have plans to create within the next couple of years a wearable, a device that utilizes artificial intelligence without a screen that will sort of be replace the iPhone as our constant bestie companion wherever we go. And that is an existential threat to the most ubiquitous technology device in America, in the world, the iPhone. Um, if iPhones suddenly cost $3,500 for a period of time, that's a bad thing. But if they're replaced altogether, I think that's worse. So,
Well, yeah, but we should. Existential is a very large word that makes me flash on the the wrong bank of the Seine River and some cigar or cigarette smoking French people. But that being said, um,
can I ask you about your
it's not
background?
going away. Apple's not going away. It's like the issue is going to be. I just want to say wearables have not been a home run. Humane had one, didn't go anywhere. A couple others tried some stuff, didn't really work out. I'm not sure people are ready to record their entire life and have AI whisper in their ear. They might. We'll see what happens with like the smart glasses that Ray-Ban and Snap and that Ray-Ban and Meta are doing, that Snap is trying separately. Uh, for all we know, Apple's trying to do. We'll see, but it ain't happening this week. It's not happening this year, and it's probably not happening for at least 3 to 4 years. Uptake. Apple sells 69 million phones a year. Now, let me know when Johnny Ive is selling 69 million IOs or whatever they end up calling the darn thing, because that's the name of this company.
Right.
So,
Listen, I think we share one fascination and belief that, Apple products are transcendental beings. I have a profound loyalty to that consumer product like few I've ever had. They've been on an incredible winning streak that has spanned decades. And I think there is no certainty that that will end, but you know, it it ends sometime. And I think I was watching analyst Gene Munster on CNBC. We included in our newsletter talk about what an amazing CEO Cook is. And he is. He is, from a supply chain perspective, taken innovation manifest by Ive, by Steve Jobs, and created the most efficient way to produce it on a mass scale, perhaps over, perhaps since the Ford created the Model T. Um, Perhaps since Henry Ford created the Model T. There you go, Vivian. Um, but at some point, you have to innovate again. You have to create new products. You have to reinvent what you've done. Is Tim Cook the right guy to do that? Will others come along and sort of steal that thunder?
Well, yeah, I mean, people are always saying they don't really innovate under Cook. They just exploit, expand, you know, iterate, and that seems to overlook the Apple Watch, a wearable that keeps track of what you do and wouldn't require a whole lot of extension from its current perch on the arms of millions of people to tap into AI, likely through your iPhone. I mean, the real issue they got to do is get their AI working better, more consistently across more stuff. It's clear last year they were caught a little flat-footed, created a whole bunch of stuff, threw it against a wall. A lot of it felt more half-baked than most of what Apple does. Particularly with software, usually it's very well, smoothed over and solves specific problems. And I would say probably the best of the AI that they have now is the image generation stuff, the Genmojis and the image playground. Those are those are pretty well done. They make it easy for somebody. You don't have to just look at a text prompt and come up with something to say to kind of create an image. It's like, here's some suggestions. Here's some ways we can help. You could have a thing like elephants and just like, do you want to put party hats on it? Do you want to put it in a mall? Do you want to have it smoking a cigar? It gives you some quick click, easy options. The rest of it feels underbaked from the writing tools, which you and I care about a lot, given our heritage. And so they need to get that right. But to me, it's a lot easier extension for them to take the Apple Watch, which Tim Cook did oversee and create, and perhaps the iPad, perhaps the iPhone, and extend those more fully into AI, more fully into a more lightweight experience than it is for Johnny Ive product guy who hasn't done anything new that's really worked out that anybody cares about for 15 years. Fantastic, fantastic designer, but what world has he changed lately? And a guy who does large language models and doesn't necessarily know a damn thing about hardware or, marketing to mass audiences. Ive doesn't really know that either. He knows how to make beautiful stuff, but his stuff doesn't happen overnight. So they got to prove it a lot more than Apple has to prove it to me in terms of being able to take that next step. Apple has a lot of work to do. And I like Munster's quote that Tim Cook is a peacetime CEO and now we're in wartime. But I think he's been through more skirmishes at the very least than somebody like Sam Altman has. So we'll see how it goes.
I don't think Munster's betting against them.
Right.
If you watch his CNBC interview, he's pretty affirmative that he'll step up and Apple will step up and innovate. That's what he said. And
Yeah.
I'm hoping they do too. I mean, the company has hell of a legacy, but there's always the risk of getting beaten. So
Yeah.
there's
Well,
also the
it's not, it may not be Ive. There's there's going to be a lot of incoming fire. I mean, it's a wartime, but there's a whole lot of competing sides, including one that you got into a little bit with Claude, right? Which is from Anthropic, a pretty big company doing pretty interesting stuff with a few hundred million or billion at this point in its belt. They did their high-end Claude. What was it called? The Claude Opus 4.
right.
Not
Well,
grandiloquent
that's
at
an
all.
interesting story. They were doing a safety test where they told the Claude that it was responsible for being assistant at a fictional company. And then they exposed Claude to a number of bogus emails. One of them was a private email from one of the engineers to a paramour indicating he was having an extramarital affair. And then Claude was led to believe that it was being replaced. So evidently, self-preservation is an instinct that Claude possesses, and Claude went through another number of scenarios where it tried to like preserve its position. Finally, it arrived on trying to blackmail the engineer, which is, kind of HAL 2000 type territory.
Or very human. I mean, disconcertingly human, because it's like normally
Right.
things a computer doesn't do, blackmail, right? I mean, maybe yours does. I don't know. Vivian
I know
more than I
these
can.
in the context of news stories and how these things play to the public. I think TechCrunch was the entity that first broke this. It's a lot. It might be more sinister than it really was for
It
them.
was, we'll
Anthropic,
give credit to Semaphore, I think, more of a tech focused thing, but it was certainly one of the.
no, they didn't break it, but
Um,
Anthropic did give Claude its highest safety rating, meaning its most critical. I forget what they call it.
ASL3, which is
Threat level midnight.
basically it's a software minefield. So be careful,
Right.
right?
So yeah, it's an interesting story. What I did take heart in this week, there was a story that was in Semaphore that interviewed some high-level PR pros. It turns back out that journalists who had been sort of displaced as middleman in the information economy by social media were back.
We're back as middlemen. This is really wonderful. I'm so
Right.
excited to be a middleman, just carrying out the requirements of our PR overlords to convey wisdom from the corporate types out there that pay them so richly and ignore us so wholly. That's
Right.
really exciting.
Amid the flora of fauna that uh, large language models scour to to come up with their answers. Mainstream media coverage, however eviscerated, still ranks very highly, along with company landing pages, academic papers, etc.
So
But
you could say that they're totally not MAGA because they're not doing that. They're going to the deep, dark recesses of 4chan and the back alleys of whatever X is these days, et cetera, et cetera. They're not doing like mainstream
right,
media. Who
that's
does MSN shit? I mean, that's for losers and informed people.
it
And
doesn't make for the
AI,
best conspiracy theory. That's true.
yes, yes, we're all part of the vast conspiracy theory. So, I mean, God bless those little AI pointed heads because they're trying to find reliable information. They got enough hallucination challenges, and trying to find reliable information, as it is for humans, is a challenge. I'm a little concerned, given the blackmailing Claude Opus 4, that they may go full MAGA too, and conspiracy theories and Laura Loomer esque, et cetera, et cetera. That would be remarkable. Not necessarily a positive step.
Well, I mean, investment is on uh, the side of artificial intelligence, as you found out this weekend, or
Yeah, yeah.
who are you talking? What investment bank?
Well, I was moderator of a panel of CEOs of some online video companies, Pocket Watch, Smosh, and Dar Man Studios, all of which are much bigger operations. And I happen to also talk the same week with the CEO of BuzzFeed Studios, which all have very large video production operations that don't look out of place with an independent production company, vertically integrated, that you might have seen in 1963, Desilu. I mean, that was a big operation under Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball, but a real pioneer that helped reshape the TV business back in the early 60s and through the early 70s in particular. These are folks creating stuff at a high level. But at the same conference, the Digital Entertainment World Conference, we had some other panels talking about investment. I talked with Daisy Stahl, who heads the entertainment finance group for California Bank and Trust. He's an executive vice president over there. And
Right.
he said, money that used to go to like a slate co-financing, like what Legendary used to do with Warner Brothers, or Skydance. You know, the guy who's buying Paramount, he got his start by doing slate co-financings, largely with Paramount and elsewhere.
Is
And
that going
so,
away?
well, he's not going away. He's buying the studio, but lots of other stuff. They're not the money that backs up those funds, and they're doing a portfolio. They do a portfolio investments like we're going to put X amount of dollars up to get a piece of 10 films or 20 films. And that reduces your risk because of the hit and miss nature, mostly miss nature of filmmaking. So, in terms of commercial success. So that money's not going there. As she put it, it's hard found money these days. And it's instead going to probably pretty high risk, but much bigger potential payoff opportunities investing in some of the zillions, and I mean zillions of AI startups out there in practically every sector, but also in entertainment. Um, we saw one that was I ran across a kind of interesting case um, this week. SAG-AFTRA, which represents
Right, right.
170,000 actors, voiceover performers, motion capture act performers, um, announcers, um, has been picketing a bunch of the big game publishers for a while, and they filed a unfair labor practices complaint against Epic, the parent company of Fortnite, one of the biggest games out there. Fortnite has a new Star Wars presence. You can get the skins and all that, and it has an AI generated Darth Vader voice that was built on stuff that James Earl Jones, the man himself, with that incredible voice, allowed to be captured and turned into this AI tool before he died last fall at 93 and signed a deal with Disney to allow them to use Darth Vader's voice in all the Godzillion Star Wars projects out there, apparently, including this one. So that entertainingly, and I do recommend folks go to the website and check it out. We have a link to the YouTube video where a bunch of unhappy voice actors went over to Fortnite and got on there and started asking goofy questions, trying to basically break the AI Darth Vader. Recorded all that, cobbled it together in about a 15-minute YouTube video that we have available in the newsletter. You can go watch it. It's quite amusing because they're trying to come up with stuff that makes this very serious Darth Vader. You apparently are presuming to do da da da, and it's sort of funny to watch some of that happen. But that's one of the more comedic things going on, though it is part of a much bigger issue, particularly in the game business,
I have
where
long wanted James Earl Jones to narrate my voicemail greeting from the days of answer machines. Like, I think I might even reached out to his agent once when I worked for the E-Cable network. So this is quite a breakthrough. This democratizes one of our greatest national resources.
well, it doesn't democratize it. It ensures that his voice, that character lives on in disturbing, extraordinary fashion
Yeah.
long past his long, extraordinary life. And I guess I'm pretty happy about that. If we could have had Bogey back in the day, Humphrey Bogart's voice captured and turned into something, that would be kind of
So
cool if Humphrey got to make money off of it. But
the term abomination never enters your lexicon in this, right? You don't think it's
there are
unusual.
abominations, and
Yeah.
there are not. The guy. There are lots of goofy things, terrible things out there. Abomination really seems like you're debasing the coin of the realm when you use words like that for things like this.
Well, I think James Earl Jones was a singular talent, and Darth Vader was, magic that was manifest from it. And but everything has a beginning and an end. It's sort of just, you know,
Just not right away, Dan.
my mind blows up when I try to think about it. I don't know.
Oh, Well, they're going to be capturing our voices, and long after we're gone, we're going to be talking about changes in the whole universe of media technology and entertainment, and making fun of it, and hopefully nearly as saucily as we do now.
Yeah, I hope SAG-AFTRA. I don't think they're gonna have a problem with it for some reason. I
Yeah,
if
well,
they,
they're not repping us, so it doesn't really matter. But that's how it
right.
goes. But these are some of the real world impacts of AI already. And I think it's useful for us as we go along to note these things. It's easy to have so much stuff running past you. It's like you're Mufasa in the middle of the wildebeests or whatever, or his dad. I guess it was his dad, whoever his dad was in The Lion King. And the wildebeests are running by and he's getting tossed and turned. That's kind of how it feels sometimes with all the AI announcements and steps forward and problems and new things to do and all that. So we're trying to keep up. But out of that same day of panels, I will say that my guys, the three CEOs, really sharp people. A couple of them have worked together back in the day at Maker. They all kind of expect that some of that investment capital is going to go look over at the margins of companies like theirs, which are in the ballpark of 35%, like software often is. And they're going to go, huh, that's interesting. They're actually growing. They actually understand how to use social media. They know how to do ads. They know how to create content on a really tight budget. And kids watch them a lot. Maybe we could roll some up into 3, 4, 5 of these things and have something real.
Speaking of kids, pretty big news story broke today on this holiday Memorial Day. CoComelon, which you've written about in the past, as of
Yeah.
uh was it New Moon Entertainment?
Uh, uh,
Moonpie, Moonbug, Moonbug,
Moonbug Entertainment,
right, which
yes.
is owned by
Candle Media, Kevin Staggs, and Kevin
right.
Mayer and Tom Staggs. Yeah.
It was a YouTube sensation that
Actually, it was a YouTube sensation, and Netflix licensed it.
right, they licensed it and it did pretty extraordinary viewership starting in 2020.
Yeah.
Uh,
But it was
it,
still on YouTube. I think it's important to not lose track. YouTube did not stop having that stuff. They still have 1,500 videos.
right, but at least the flagship series seems to have peaked. Netflix,
Yeah.
they lost license to this series starting in January 2027.
All their fans turned
Flagship,
7. That's the problem. They all turned 7 and they aged out.
right. The flagship series, CoComelon, will move to Disney Plus.
Yeah.
Remaining on Netflix will be the spin-off series, CoComelon Lane, in addition to Blippi, another Moonbug series. So they're not getting out of the Moonbug business, but they did let
They
sort
let that
of,
one go. Well, in 2027, so it's not happening right away. So by the time it happens, all the kids that are related to you that are watching it now will no longer care. But it is interesting to think about, okay, so Disney's making this deal with that somewhat declining asset, still a big asset. But I mean, they're making this deal because it's trying to shore up its presence with the kids stuff because that's a major source of their subscribers on Disney Plus, right? I mean, they're not signing up for Hulu. The parents might be watching some
they
Hulu
misbelieve.
shows.
I mean, Netflix, it's a big deal for kids programming is a big deal for Netflix. It's like 15% of their viewership,
Yeah,
which is substantial.
right.
But
But they
Disney
also change things up a lot. I think more than people realize.
Disney
So,
must believe they have, something that will reinvigorate the franchise and spark viewership. I don't know what is the statute. SpongeBob lasted 20 years. I mean, what is the statute of limitations on these things?
well, but SpongeBob, and let's be very careful because I have actually stood in line for 2 hours next to Tom Kenny, the voice of SpongeBob and the Ice King in Adventure Time, and had a lovely conversation with him on his birthday, waiting for a famous science fiction writer and screenwriter to stop yabbering and sign our goddamn books that he was selling. But Tom Kenny, the thing with SpongeBob is SpongeBob was not just a kid's show. It was clever enough and like classic Looney Tunes, it played
Right.
at a couple of different levels. Nobody's expecting CoComelon to play at any level other than 1.5 and 2.5.
Right. This is a bad example. Sesame Street, which Netflix did acquire for
But
BBS.
you're not watching Sesame Street with your kids
Right.
unless you have to.
What I'm saying is, Disney must feel that this is the kind of franchise that can be recycled over and over again. Netflix
Right.
is just marketing the wrong way. I don't know what Disney thinks, but it is I don't know what they paid, but it's a
Right.
surprising move for me.
Well, it's, you think about it, famously back in the day, they would put out Snow White and Beauty and the Beast. They would release them in theaters like every 7 years on the belief they take them out of the vault, right? There was like these classic animation films back in the day, and they'd pull them out of the vault every 7 years and do a little theatrical release for the next generation of kids that would be really into Beauty and the Beast and Snow White, et cetera, Bambi, Dumbo.
Yeah, I remember my brother took me to see Mary Poppins. I couldn't be more bored.
Right,
I've been
right.
subjected to some of these things.
You
Here's
had
how it
moved
works.
beyond a spoonful of sugar at that point, but you may have always had a sour disposition, Daniel. I'm just throwing that out there.
I believe in the possibility that that's true. I'm leaving that open. Yeah.
It could be so. I speaking of family friendly audiences, I did talk to my he wasn't really a schoolmate, but his brother was of mine, and he was a league mate of yours, and you had a very different experience with him. And I
Oh, he was
find,
a prince. He was a steely-eyed prince. You're talking
well,
about
I
me.
think the word you were going to use was actually, it began with PRI, but did not end with NCE. But that being said, uh, I uh, I had a fine experience with him. I met him first. I love to tell his story. It's the only Hollywood premiere I ever went to where people were tall, and it was for the movie, the remake of Walking Tall, the MGM film, and
Sure.
everybody was freaking tall. And like, I'm 6'3". Usually I go into a Hollywood premiere and it is short people as far as the eye can see, except for some models wearing 4-inch heels. And at that place, everybody was tall. The Rock was 6'5". The Rock's body double was 6'4". The Rock's girlfriend was 6 feet tall. These guys I started chatting with, all tall guys, very friendly. Turns out they went to the same high school I went to. They were there because they were there for Neil, who they went to high school with. And it turns out Neil's older brother is a guy I ran track with and was in my physics class with a bunch of unbelievably brilliant guys who went on to Harvard and Princeton, including Jerry. But so we connected 15, 18 years ago. And then this thing came up. And this one's interesting because he's getting into producing now. He's done a lot of stuff, film, TV, voiceovers, and games, and animation. He's done a lot of stuff, and now he and his wife are co-writing stuff. They're producing things. They've been slowly ratcheting it up, and they're doing it on Angel Studios, which is this little niche-focused faith. Not they say they're not faith-based, but they want films that amplify light. They've got this Angel Guild, which I think I've written about here, of about 1 million subscribers that have to sign off on a film being added to their slate. So you've got like a built-in audience, and that group signs off, and then they get 2 tickets to go to the movie when it hits theaters. Which this one,
So the last rodeo was this released
the
the
last movie, it was released this weekend,
Yeah.
and because Angel Studios does it a little bit differently, it doesn't get counted. The box office doesn't, because of the way the tickets are handled, and stuff. I don't think it gets counted the same way in box office. But it opened in more than 2,000 screens, which is a substantial release. And set also of interest to me was that it was set in the professional bull riders circuit.
Right.
And PBR is owned by TKO Holdings, whose biggest core operations are UFC and WWE, both of which it's busy selling off more TV rights. These are like the last good TV rights that'll be up for bid, other than that set of baseball rights that ESPN walked away from, that for the next 3 or 4 years. So they're going to sign these deals, and whatever was baseball, probably maybe NBC picks it up for half as much as ESPN was paying. And then nothing until like 2029. And, it's you're just trying to imagine what the sports rights world looks like. You've written a lot about this. What does that sports rights world look like by the time we get to these next rounds of
Oh, I mean,
re-ups?
the whole combat sports phenomena is just really powerful. I mean, you look at I mean, you look at just UFC and WWE events in the state of Florida. It's sort of like the nexus for our political zeitgeist at this point. You know, where with Donald
Yeah,
Trump,
Trump's gone there, right? Other
DeSantis
Mario
was booed
Rubio.
over the weekend. You
I'm
know,
sorry, what?
this Trump was lauded a few months ago in Miami during a
Right,
UFC event, and then
right.
Ron DeSantis went to WWE 900 and whatever over the weekend and got booed. It's sort of kind of the Roman Colosseum in the days that Gladiator picks up, that kind of decadent period. It's you can sort of check your temperature by making an appearance there. So listen,
So it's a little chilly in even in Florida for Ronnie D.
I know I'm making this a little bigger than TV rights, but I'm just saying it's a big part of our society and our culture. Don't underestimate it, like I once did.
Well, it should have been. It should have been just as NASCAR has largely been for Trump and Trump supporters. It should have been home field advantage, right? And I think what you're saying is, this is interesting. Not everybody's excited about, a governor in a Florida in a state that is overwhelmingly been dominated by the Republican Party, and that should be a core audience. That's perfectly fine
They
with that.
they've turned on him. I guess the negative branding when he tried to oppose Trump has stuck to him. So
Um,
his political
well,
career
that's one of the difficult things to navigate if
he's
you're a
been branded zero
politician. That's
charisma. But
yeah.
I think it's interesting. I want to return to Mr. McDonough for a second. So how did you get hooked up with this junket? What happened?
Um, a guy I know said, "Hey, we got this film coming up tied to PBR." McDonough got so into professional bull riding, bull riders that he and his wife actually bought a piece of the Austin PBR team because they now have
Oh,
team riding, and the league itself, the circuit, was completely involved in making them. They made their riders available, their arenas available, their bowls available. And the bowls, let's not dismiss this. The bowls are trained, pampered athletes, bred to purpose, who
that
typically have
sounds like Neil a little bit, based
a
on
little. Well, I don't know that he was bred in Hyannis,
well, he's certainly
Massachusetts.
pampered. I could testify to that. But
Well, that's entirely
I
possible.
wonder if he was getting
Shocking that a Hollywood actor who's actually making money would be somewhat pampered.
he
But
I wonder if he's following that Taylor Sheridan playbook. I mean, he was on Yellowstone for a while. It's a pretty effective baddie.
yeah, yeah, and he's on another Taylor Sheridan show, Tulsa King. He was in the all 10 episodes of the second season of Tulsa King, which is the Sylvester
I know I've
Stallone.
watched it. I really like the Taylor Sheridan universe, even though I don't love the political messaging. I think it's just addictive stuff. But that's the
Oh, he's
one
great.
show that I just really couldn't get
Couldn't
into.
get into it. Yeah. Well,
Couldn't you know? I don't buy Stallone as a mobster.
right.
I don't know. I should, but I don't. He's
Right. Just because you're Italian and you got a funny accent doesn't mean you're a mobster. It's sort of a little
exactly.
presumptuous in some ways, particularly in a town like Los Angeles where they just had a big war between two Armenian organized crime gangs that led to the feds cracking down. But
I'll tell you who's a mobster, and I'll say it again. I've said it in previous iterations of our newsletter. That Tom Hardy and that Pierce Brosnan and Helen Mirren,
play it well in Mob.
Mobland.
Yeah.
Oh man, every Sunday night I'm hooked.
All right. Well, that'll be something to look out for.
Oh, we'll move on to like relevant topics, but I want to give another shout out to a 11-year-old Showtime series called The Affair.
Oh yeah, yeah. That was a great show. Yeah.
Oh man,
Dominic West, Ruth. I can't ever remember her last name. Is
Cynthia
Ruth?
Nixon is in it.
Yeah.
Brendan Fraser plays a rogue prison guard. It jumps the shark big time in season 3, but I'm still with it. I've been binging that pretty heavily here in the desert in Trilogy. You can see that I got my own Trilogy coffee cup.
Unfortunately, it doesn't. I'll take your word for it. It doesn't show up. It doesn't show up when you use the green screen backdrop. Another thing I'd like to say a little little I don't know, goodbye to the LA operations of ESPN. They shut them down. This last week was their
He did?
last broadcast. Yes.
No,
And
too bad. Why?
they're pulling everything back to Bristol because, of course, that is the center of the universe as they try to save money. Stan Verrett, who's been with ESPN for 20 odd years, is not having his contract renewed. It is, I think it's not great that such a dominant sports operation would be so centered in a real backwater like Bristol and not and a long way from a whole lot of stuff. You know, LA is LA, but there's a lot of stuff on this side of the planet, even in this country, that deserves more attention than somebody at 1 a.m. in Bristol can give it. So personally, I think it's a loss for fans on the West Coast who are actually awake because it's only 10 o'clock our time. So,
Yeah, I mean, it was right across the street from Crypto, the erstwhile Staples Center.
yeah,
In the
for,
height of the Shaq Kobe years, it was sort of a nexus of, you know, the
yeah,
sports
yeah.
side.
I mean, it had a nice run and
Yeah,
all gone. So that even they, as they transition to what is no longer called the flagship, but the ESPN app, just ESPN, as they transition, they are cutting things that are perceived. And it's not. I mean, the NFL network did the same thing. They pulled back to New York. I think they had a big operation out here and pulled things back
yeah. Well,
last
I've said
year.
this before. It's also the last week of TNT, having the NBA. I mean, they'll still be involved as a licensing partner to ESPN, and within inside the NBA, but it won't be like it was. I mean, it will just be a tangential part with an unknown amount of content. Um, they're doing the Eastern Conference Finals, the Knicks versus Pacers.
Yeah. I mean, it's and they've at least had some barn burner games with the Knicks and Pacers to go
Right.
out on a high note before they go fishing for a while. But we at least know they're coming back just again for ESPN. But ESPN also killed off, and it's worth noting also around the horn, their unlikely game show featuring sports writers in a sort of odd competition to who had the best takes on the day's sports news. And
Right.
that too has gone by. Bill Plaschke, the LA Times columnist, who normally drives me slightly nuts, but maybe that's sometimes a columnist's job, but he does it pretty
Just
consistently.
swings for the fences. And I've learned to sort of like,
Yeah, but the fences sometimes are in a whole different park than the one he's swinging in. I'm just
yeah,
saying. I mean, but that being said, he amusingly noted that he had a little funeral notice, but said he was probably put on mute more than anybody else in the history of the show, like 1,357 times or something.
right.
A very large number. It's like their version of a penalty box. Like, you know, journalists can't talk. That is kind of cruel and unusual punishment. But
Yeah, I mean, I mean, imagine they did this to you, David. I mean, I can't think of a more cruel,
right, I
inhumane.
would curl up in a fetal ball,
Let's
rock
get
back and
to
forth. This is not happening. This is not happening. I'd be doing full Gollum. You
let's
know.
get to one of your favorite topics, which is the traditional movie box office. A big record-breaking week, according to the Pinsky Showbiz Trades, the Wall Street Journal, and other big mainstream publications. 326 million and change that the domestic box office has been predicted for. I think it's a 5-day frame starting Thursday.
Yeah, they sort of start with previews Thursday night. It's not technically the weekend, but they show them at Thursday at midnight for the films and throw that into the holiday total. So it's another one of those goofy box office specific
What
weirdness.
I find surprising is you've got smart people, and these are smart publications, and the writers who wrote these box office reports, or I know some of them, they're smart.
Me too. They've been at it for a long time. They kind of know how it works.
But if they don't mention inflation, why is that? I mean, if they said that this Memorial Day broke the previous record, which was set in 2013 when Hangover 3 and what was the other film? It was the Fast and Furious 6, generated 314 million. But if you divide the average ticket price that year, which was $8.13, you got something like 38.5 million viewers. And if you divide this year's take, 326 million, by what is now the average price, every place from Wyoming to New York, um, I think it's $14 and change according to NATO, and you get a figure of like 20 million. So
Yeah,
the 2013 Memorial Day audience was actually twice as big. And I don't want to like,
but paying half as much, and that's what it is. The thing is, this has been going on, hiding the gradual decline of movie attendance versus the money, wrung out of those attendees for at least 20 years. And I point out in the newsletter, you did some very specific math, but
right.
they talk about how great this weekend is. Okay, fine. Ignore the fact that dollars 15 years ago were a lot more valuable than dollars today, particularly after years of inflation post pandemic. But if you look at the months of May, this month of May, I'm looking at Box Office Mojo as we speak so far, and obviously there's still 3 or 4 days left in the month, but it's at 790 million, so call it 800 million. That's the best since the pandemic for a May, since 2020. But
Right.
in 2019, and for 8 of the 11 years before that, May was over a billion. So they're really excited about a decent weekend, ignoring inflation. And it's still so far behind what it was pre pandemic, and it has no evidence it will catch up.
I don't want to shit on the theatrical box office. I still think it has a place in the media ecosystem, a big one, and I hope it does for a long time. A more niche one, probably so. I think it's a bad posture to keep saying, things are dying. Their importance is ebbs and flows sometimes. But I'm just saying, report on it a little more honestly, market a
Yeah,
little
and
more.
that's totally fair and appropriate, and don't hold your breath. But that also says, though, you know, not dying, not going away. There's still 33,000 screens or something like that out there. There's still these studios putting out some films, big ones that they make sometimes very substantial amounts of money on, and sometimes lose very substantial amounts of money on. Um, but the thing that gets interesting is as fewer and fewer people go, there's this whole infrastructure, which includes the Penske trades and the award shows and all of that infrastructure, all the movie reviewers and all those folks kind of depend on movies to write about stuff, to have a celebrity culture. And it's going to be interesting to see how long it remains truly culturally relevant in a big way, where films were the thing still 15 years ago. Increasingly, they feel a little bit less important, but the machine cranks on. And so I think that's the really interesting.
The machine cranks on, and
Like us, we're the machine too.
or we just get cranky. Um,
Well, we're the cranky machine cranking on.
I guess we can remind folks to read the newsletter,
At
visit,
nexttmt.com.
right? Just enter an email address. We won't sell it or co-opt it in any way. We won't even look at it.
Yeah,
But
follow us on socials.
yeah, and you can see this podcast on Spotify.
Yeah,
Forget that. That's important. Good, good. And we've got Stream TV. Stream
and we've
TV
got
Live.
Stream TV in a couple of weeks, and we'll be pumping out video stuff and daily reports from the show floor and much else as the stormtroopers in honor of Darth Vader and AI Darth Vader.
It's a, let me do,
We are
it's a
the
3-day event.
stormtroopers of Quest X on this one.
We're
And
pretty
that
excited
conference
about
has
that one.
really taken off. I mean, I moderated a panel there a couple of years ago, and it's really, I mean, credit to QuestX, our beloved new partners. But they've really built that into something pretty notable in a fast changing
Hopefully,
business.
we can get this done before the background check and just get it under the wire,
Yeah, right. Exactly. All
All
right,
right.
Daniel, that should do it. It's good talking to you, brother. I'll
As
see
always,
you.
David, thank you, buddy.
All right, man. Bye bye. Great.